Hi, welcome to the webinar. Uh, Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining in. This is Suresh, and I have Deepthi Bhatia with me. We are here to talk about cybersecurity, a metric-driven approach. Over the next few minutes, we will structure a short presentation more as a placeholder for the discussions. But the real outcome of a very effective communication here would be more questions from you so that we can try and answer them, and that will be a great opportunity. I just wanted to make sure, am I audible and visible to you clearly?
You can respond in the chat box if you're able to hear us clearly.
I can see someone saying that. Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
Thanks, Neeraj. Thanks, Shahid. Yeah, good. So we know that we are we are clear about this. Thank you very much again. So this is a short presentation and a discussion on metric-driven security. Multiple cybersecurity attacks have happened across. Okay, whether it is so. Look at any breach that has happened across in a plethora of events. They are all essentially exploitation of a technical weakness in your systems or your applications or your infrastructure. And each of them, it could be because of a weak process in place. It could be because you have compromised your passwords. That could be a people issue. But essentially, that breach has occurred because of an exploitation of a technical issue. Whether it is software vulnerabilities or compromised credentials, or weak passwords, malicious employees, poor encryption, ransomware, phishing, misconfiguration, which is a very big thing in the cloud side today, trust relationship, denial of service, everywhere. This is what has been the and for each of these, there is an underlying technology or a solution that's available to ensure that you have a sufficient control to possibly avoid such occurrence. So if you have software vulnerabilities, what do? You build a proper secure SDLC process. You do a good threat modeling. You do a good secure code review, and you ensure that your applications are safe. If it is about identity and access management, what do? You have multi-factor authentication coupled with encryption and with privilege identity management systems, and that provides you good solutions for compromised credentials. And weak passwords, what can you do? Encryption, what can you do? In ransomware, which is the number one threat today, what do? You create a high level of awareness, you perform continuous assessments, you ensure that your restricted internet access is absolute, and an absolute a basis in which only the need to know have access to your systems, and so on and so forth. And the biggest entry for malware, ransomware into your setup is through email. So ensure you have a very sound email security in place. Now, so essentially what I'm trying to build around here is it could be any problem. You need a good solution to have in place. Sometimes you need to have a solution that is appropriate to your risk posture. Yeah, so you can continue to spend, and there is a famous saying here, from 98.5% security can be achieved with $100,000. To go to 99, you need $1 million. And to go to 99.75, you need $10 million. And even if you spend $100 million from there, you can't go from 99.75 to 99.9. I'm not, and this is just a illustrative example. This is not to be taken in context to one particular industry or so. I'm just saying that the return of your available investment is going to be only so much. Even if you spend so much more, you're not going to be. So you need to fix an appropriate curve at saying, I'm going to spend this much, I'm going to derive what is maximum security within that. Now we are talking about measurement. How do you derive that, and how do you achieve it, and how do you implement it is all going to be the discussion for today.
Also, the solution that we pick, what vulnerability or what weakness are we trying to remediate over here? And it's not that only one solution will solve one vulnerability for you. One solution can address multiple vulnerabilities for you. How do you measure that and incorporate it in your strategy is what we should focus on.
Absolutely. So mitigation of risk. So there could be one small solution that can address, for example, when I've been talking to various clients, I say, your single most important thing is you should go for a very sound EDR solution that can actually address a number of solutions for you in place. Your single most important thing is you have a sound application security practice in place that will alleviate your risks in a very sound way. So essentially, it's about for knowing what to do and how to do and when to do. Measuring security becomes very, very important.
So, Suresh, do we have to implement the same kind of controls for everybody? I feel a small organization doesn't need to have a NASA level security. There are multiple solutions, multiple ways where the controls can be implemented. How do you feel that the graded security controls comes into play for all?
I think it's a very apt question. So you said NASA level security. Are we actually going? So this is boiling the ocean where it is required and where it is not. Who requires what solution could be very specific based on industry, the size of your business, and what is your privacy requirement, and what is your intellectual property, and so on and so forth. So it could be various factors. And a banking industry is today in India, banking industry is very highly regulated by RBI. With data privacy bill now coming up, and if, for example, a client based having European Union records has GDPR as a regulation that they need to, or if it could be an equivalent of that in US, California privacy CCPA, that could have a lot of controls. So it depends on what industry. If you are from the healthcare, then you need to have high trust in place. So high trust provides a number of controls in place. If you are in the payment card industry, you could be subject to PCI data security controls. But irrespective of this, you want to build a best in class so that you get a business advantage of it. And therefore, you're going to set up and say, I want to implement NIST security framework. All of that. But it depends on multiple factors where you want to, what decides the security posture depends on the type of industry you are. That is primarily driven by compliance and regulations. The second is your risk posture, which is going to bring your business advantage, and so on and so forth. So here in this particular slide, please understand this is just a rudimentary exercise. This is not a detailed engineering exercise that's been done. This is just a rudimentary exercise to say that you have in access control 5 different levels. So you want to explain that, Deepti?
Yeah. So when we look at access control as an example over here, not necessary unless and until you have an SSO or identity federation, you can't comply to the control, or you can't implement the control. There are different formats in which you can adhere to that control. One example is have a simple access, policy level access, how we used to do when we had a conventional AD. Put policy controls. You have group policies where you restrict the access. That is when we transition again another way, coming to rule-based, role-based access. So these are all different types of accesses, different methodologies how control can be implemented in the environment. It again depends on what industry we are in, what is our business requirement, what is our risk appetite.
So likewise, you could go to every domain of security. Every domain of security, you could go and say, where do you want to stand and where do you stand now? So you define what your target state is. You also define where your current state is. You assess where your current state is. You define what your target state is. You build what is called the opportunity list. So one, you need to know where you are. Two, you need to know where you need to go to, and then you need to build what is the timeline that you're going to take, and what's the cost that you're going to take to build between your current state to your target state, right? So, for example, in cloud security, secure configuration of hardware and software for the cloud environment. Continuous VAPT is your next level. Adding multi-factor authentication, comprehensive identity management using CASBs and things like that. And then you build a comprehensive identity management solution from there. And then ensure that you have a full-fledged cloud security posture management through controlled use of privileged access and other things implemented. Now you get the various stages. Some may be at 1, some may be at 4. So you decide where you want to go and then define and then keep measuring on the way. So that's going to help you to move in this direction, right? So there are various models available. The most common model is in the software industry. CMMI has taken a huge leap, and in the process industry, Lean Six Sigma has taken a huge adoption. I found that implementing a NIST cybersecurity framework on overlapping on a maturity of CMMI probably is simpler. But again, this is not an advocacy for that. We follow that when we do consulting with our clients in this way. But you could choose whichever way you want to move there. I think that, the CMI maturity level is more practical as well as philosophical in one way. Finally, calling the final maturity is optimizing because it's a continuous curve. And then what could be done from where you need to go to what level, and using the NIST cybersecurity framework, using the NIST best practices, you build this. You have a fairly compelling story to tell your board about how your security is and how your security needs to be, right?
So it's not necessary for us to only stick to NIST. We can adopt CMMI in any of the standards we want to. NIST being a globally recognized standard, it is easier for you to also present and have a common ground if you want to have a comparative score within your industry. So one of the advantages of having a framework along with NIST measuring is easier, adaptable, and comparative.
Absolutely. The aspects that when we're talking about whether it's NIST or when you want to, I keep using NIST as a common cybersecurity framework for reference, because I think the commonality that they have brought and the best practices that they have brought in the recent years, and completely adaptive to the changing threat landscape and continuously addressing it. I think it's been a fair amount of. I'm not trying to say any one other framework does not address it in a great way. I've known some standard frameworks that actually still hasn't modified their antivirus check as a basic need when the solutions have gone beyond the agentless migration for malware detection. So the technology has evolved. However, the framework supporting that organization has not evolved. So I think we need to adopt a framework that is very concurrent to the changing threat landscape. I think NIST has done a phenomenal job in continuously adapting to the changing threat landscape there. Various frameworks exist. Again, choose whichever one you want to. But important more than the framework is the process of measuring. Because you need to know where you are, you need to know where you need to be, so that you can appropriately tell the board. You can appropriately tell the board that you need this budget. Every time, this is a standard discussion when we are having with CISOs. The CISO has actually gone and said, so they had a breach and they went in for a curative solution soon after that. They went and asked for that we need to implement 1, 2, 3, 4. They implemented those 4. And then what happened? Then there was another breach that happened outside of this 4. Now the board is saying you came and said that you are good, and then what happened now? So this is where I keep saying that you, much before the breach, you go ahead and say, my email security current posture is at 1.5. I wanted to go to 3.5. I wanted to build 1, 2, 3, 4 security controls for this in place. My current posture as far as web security is concerned is 2.1, and I wanted to move to 3.5, and I want 1, 2, 3 solutions in place for that. My current incident response process is currently at 1.0, for which I need to improve that to 3.5. And I'm giving 3.5 as a standard reference. Okay, I'm saying as a target state. You could set it at 3.2. I'm just giving an example. You could set it that way. Then what happens? That could require technology, that could require skill expertise, that could require people to be hired, that could require few outsourcing companies to be hired to help you in your incident response process. But all of these are your actionables that you take as your opportunity list to move your information security posture. And this way of maturity provides you a clear way to define your security posture, define and provide to the board. Once this is done, I think it is almost clear that 90% of the board today is asking about questions on cybersecurity posture. So almost every CISO or practitioners who are listening to this who have a connection with your CISOs will have a need to go back and say where you are and where you need to be. We are just trying to provide an easy framework to say how that can be achieved.
Another practical example that we keep discussing a scenario. Do I need to achieve 3.5 for every vector that I see? Do I need to be at 3.5 for email? Do I need to be at 3.5 for my cloud security, for my physical security? So again, the suggestion that would come over here is it depends on the threat vector that you are most vulnerable to.
Let's take email security. That's that on the slide here.
Yeah.
Email security is today the most notorious high occurrence breach vector. Almost every company is today susceptible to email threat. Because everybody has email and everybody gets, so some are highly targeted, some are just spray on the field kind of attack, but they get susceptible to that and then they get attacked because malware comes in, ransomware comes in, and the organization gets affected. So let's just take through the maturity level on email security as a example. If you want to just take through and talk about that.
So, taking email security as an example, all of us now are either using an Office 365 model or a G Suite model or enterprise versions that are there. So, a simple example, the different licenses that we have, even the product has provided us different maturity levels that we want to achieve, aligned with their license standards that are there. The basic standard will give you basic security controls where you can restrict the spams that are coming in, restrict some domains, have a basic filtering for tools, for attachments. Wherein if you progress to the next level, a simple control like a DLP monitoring, that gets introduced. So that is also helping you achieve the maturity going on to the next level. You can have that implemented for a small section. You can have it implemented for your entire workspace. It depends on how we want to utilize that.
Perfect. So here is where so this is the hue from the red through orange to yellow to green, how the maturity moves through adoption and adaptation of various security controls that take you to a higher maturity plane from where you are to where you need to be.
Let's take another example, Suresh. Another vector that everybody is now focusing on, especially after COVID, cloud adoption is very high. What is that, and how do we ensure that we have a mature practice, a mature security posture? How do we move from 0 to 5, 1 to 5 on our cloud security?
80% of the cloud breaches have been because of a misconfiguration. So that becomes your number one thing to address. Your absolute basic thing that you need to address is your sound, secure configuration of your cloud assets. So we say define secure configuration for your hardware systems and your software that is deployed on the cloud. That's going to take you to what is absolutely required. So that's basic initial maturity level. Then you can move on in that through various stages. You build a global image, you do continuous VAPT. That's going to take you to have sufficient maturity to say that you are now in a situation that you can manage it better. To get to the defined stage, you need to add more controls, define your KPI metrics for access violations, certificate configuration, include cloud access security broker or whatever solutions that, you're not necessarily saying a CASB is absolutely required for you to move from 3 to 3.5. No, that's not what I'm suggesting. This is a pictorial representation to say that these controls add to your maturity, and it is very contextual to the type of data that you're handling in the cloud. If your data, and therefore the most important thing that you need to do is know what is the data that you're trying to protect. And if you move in that direction, that data centric security is what will take you to a high level of maturity. right?
Additionally, I feel, for example, if we have a cloud security posture management solution also implemented, but that solution is throwing vulnerabilities or is throwing results for us that a basic configuration is not in place.
That provides a real-time change in configuration. So look at that, what that does to the cloud assets. A real-time update of your change in your posture is immediately thrown out. That's a compelling solution to say that you've reached a level of maturity. Yeah, for sure, yes.
So also having additional controls will help us monitor that vector.
So you've done various studies on maturity model. Tell us about the case study that you brought up on the slide here. So what did you do and how did you?
So it's actually a very interesting case study that we have, how we have progressed, or rather how we have improved, postured the security practices in the organization. First step for any organization to set up their security framework is to have policies, is to define what I want to do. That first step gives us the visibility on what we are trying to achieve. Have the technologies implemented. It's not necessary that technology is required for every control we want to implement. There are compensatory controls out there in terms of process or manual reviews or monitoring that can be added, provided it aligns with your risk appetite. But it helps you move and improve your security posture, moving from what I want to what is there on ground. The interesting point over here is the timeline. How you structure and how the organization security posture grows over time in the time period that I am growing in talks a lot or contributes a lot to the maturity of the organization, the measurement that we are trying to do.
So question here, is it an absolute must to have an 18-month window, or can you compress some in 6 months, or does it require do organizations take longer than 18 months to move up the maturity curve?
Yes, so a very good point. It is not mandatory for us to have an 18 months roadmap. There are organizations who have achieved a scale of 4 in mere 8 months or 9 months of putting up their strategies. There are also examples available where they've put a 3-year strategy but still are not able to show the maturity or not able to measure the output of the controls and the posture that they are trying to put across the organization.
So I think this is a key aspect here. If the CISOs take to the board to say, with a clear timeline and a budget to say, this is where we are, this is where we need to be, CISOs get their budget. I'm a big advocate of ensuring that you guys get the right budget, and therefore you're able to implement a sound posture for your organization. In most times, what happens is most companies, the board is very, very focused on ensuring a faster growth strategy, or they spend, but the right spend that is required to say where you need to be, or at least make sure that you tell the board, look, you're not spending, that's fine, but we are going to remain at maturity 2.3. Be aware of it. So that way you have apprised the board that this is your current posture and this is the current risk that is associated with that. That's the key aspect that we want. This is a very, very compelling story that I want to bring it to the team here. That this way you have a clear shot way of presenting and telling how how to take your security posture to the next level of maturity, right? I see some comments. We will soon take questions. If there is anything, please continue to keep your questions ready. We will take to the Q&A very, very shortly. Is there anything else that we want to?
So, just wanted to highlight, we've been talking about that you should measure. How do you measure? What is the process that we should follow? It's a very simple process. We've been measuring around in our daily lives as well. Measurement is a very integral part of our daily life. Simple process over there. You have to define what I want to measure. Continuously measure that. Identify what needs to be improved. Keep monitoring it.
Perfect. Okay, so here is an illustrative example. Take your current state and say where you are. And this is an example of a sample of a particular company. They have a great asset management practice in place. They have a great metrics reporting in place, but they're extremely poor in threat intelligence and collecting information relating to that. It's a very offshoot scenario for you, but just we are giving this cue for you to understand where things are. They have a great change management process in place, but they have a terrible incident management process in place. Very closely easy to identify, but the moment you set up a good change management practice in place, to address an adjoining problem management and an incident management place is quite easy. Capacity management may be all the more difficult because it has so many other components. Performance and capacity have a lot of business context to it, and therefore slightly difficult. So this company, SIM integration is very poor. So all they need to look at is what are the new assets that we need. So how do you build an opportunity list here? So ensure which are the key assets that need to be added to your SIM integrations. Add that across. Get your threat hunting and your use cases clearly done. Provide your threat intel feeds properly done, so that your existing SOC reporting team can start doing a more intelligent job. And that will add to the security posture, very, very key to this particular case study and example.
So another example that we have where you can actually use that to measure where you are and present the target state, identifying the opportunities and identifying where I want to be. Another very important question that comes up is, I have identified 10 points. How do I implement 10 together? I don't have the budget. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the manpower. What do we do?
Stay on here. In every aspect here you see, which is what I've been saying for a number of times today in this webinar, that there is a current state and there is a target state. The one you see as the blue buttons are your target state for each one. The one you see as the arrows that are there are your current state. So governance is at 2, business environment, security is at 3, risk management strategy is at 1, so asset management is at 3, and so on and so forth. Awareness and training is at 0.5, very, very poor. So they need to do a lot more on that. So based on this, you build your opportunity list. So how do you build the opportunity list? So once you build the opportunity list, look at that from at least the 3 risk. What is the risk that it tries to mitigate? What is the cost of implementation? And what's the executional complexity? Now, these 3 things could tell you what you want. You can identify what your low-hanging fruits are. So your budget cycle is from April. Some budget cycles could be from January. So you're not going to. So you're in September. You're not going to get budget till January for implementing a few solutions, and therefore I'm not going to do that. But however, I have time now, so I'm going to do that now. Even though it's medium, I'll implement it now. But when the money comes, I can implement that later, and so on and so forth. That will bring you the index of prioritization. So
this is how we can actually bundle up, looking at what is the risk we are trying to address, what is the complexity, what is the budget I have in hand, what is that I can implement with all that I have, so that I continuously keep improving, and you can have your priorities put across.
So you have your priorities to say what you're going to implement, what you're not going to implement,
Yes.
what. So you could take. So what necessarily is your prior? Is your set 2 of implementation. It doesn't necessarily mean they are less important, but that from an organization standpoint, against the available people with you, against the available budget with you and the resources with you, this is the best that you can do to mitigate and improve on the posture.
So quickly, we've heard a lot. We have to measure. We've seen how to measure, how to assess. But why should we do that? How are we adding value to our security posture? That is helping us identify what are the key insights. What is that I should focus on and move forward?
Last but not the least, CyRAACS is a consulting services company that has been continuously been in consulting services, providing maturity model assessments. So we do a number of this. So if you have any needs to write to us, please write to me or to Deepthi or reach out to us in our website. We'll be very happy to engage with you. I'll be happy to take questions, and if you have any questions,
I think we have a question.
We have a question from Naresh Narayanappa. Okay. Naresh, reach us to us separately. We will take it up. Any questions that we have currently from our Q&A? Jagan, what is the role of threat hunting and threat intelligence SOC via endpoint application security tools? What is the role of threat hunting and threat intelligence in SOC via endpoint? See, when you have a SOC in place, the SOC necessarily needs to look at all the critical assets in your company to look for what is available, what are the available threats, and the threat intel is a completely different feed that comes from various sources of threat intelligence that comes across. Now, using these two, the triaging that is done by the SOC is the activity of threat hunting and SOC. But your question on application endpoint security tools, let's say, for example, somebody has implemented CrowdStrike. And CrowdStrike is a EDR solution that's available. I'm not here endorsing CrowdStrike. I'm only taking an example of an EDR solution. Now, that has a live feed, so the agent in your endpoint is directly monitored by the central console, and therefore they are providing that. I think it's a very compelling solution to have in place as far as endpoint security is concerned. So EDR solutions definitely take your posture to your next level of maturity. I hope that answered your question in that, Jagan. Ankush, can metricized security be adopted in any industry? Metricized security can be adopted in any industry. More pertinent for highly regulated industry, it is a must to have, I would say, or definitely a great advantage and gives you a better benefit in a heavily regulated industry or heavily IPR driven, intellectual property driven industry. But if you are from the non-regulated industry, it is still something good for you to have, because the world is moving digital. Take for example just the banking and payments. How many times have we visited the bank today? In the last 10 years, the amount of visits to the bank has dropped so much. And look at what UPI has done. The ATMs are becoming irrelevant. So the instruments of business have changed. They're moving heavily into digital space, and therefore adoption of digital naturally means an adoption of a higher level of cyber resources. Adoption of higher cyber resources require higher security posture. So whichever industry, your cybersecurity relevance is going higher and higher. Hope that answered your question, Ankush.
We have another question, Suresh. What are the models that focus on delivering metricized security, cybersecurity?
Okay, this is from Sumant Raja Kumar. Any specific models in your portfolio that focuses on delivering metricized So I'm not sure whether I understood the question in full. If the question is the models I talked about, the metricized models of NIST and CMMI is what we follow in CyRAACS, but I'm not advocating that as the model to follow. Any model can be used. You have your own model also, that is fine. But you go stick your neck into the bird and tell that I am here and therefore I am susceptible to these risks. I need to move here. I need these resources. Get them, implement them, move up in your security. That's an absolute must. Abhilash Sheshagiri, how can metricized security help a small company build a cybersecurity plan? Just like as I said for my previous question, for a small company with extremely minimal resources, a startup, is this an absolute must to have? I am not sure whether it is an absolute must to have, but I will tell it this way. Is it an absolute must? No. But will you benefit from it?
Yes.
Great. You will definitely benefit from it. Jane L. Would this recording presentation be available? Yes, it will be. What is the target? Amrita Chaudhary, what is the target maturity score a NBFC or a fintech should look at? Now, I'll be very specific to the CMMI score. And NBFC is a heavily regulated industry and therefore should be at an operational level of 3.5. A fintech is not necessarily regulated, but they are supporting an NBFC or a bank or the banking industry, and therefore they should have an operating maturity of 2.8 at least. This is 2.75. Should be a good way to look at that aspect. Again, I am talking specifically from a CMMI scoring methodology. Tejas BR, what is the target maturity technology product company? A fintech company, I was necessarily talking about the same thing. So the same thing applies there too. But if the technology product company is providing a service beyond the product on a SaaS-based platform where transactional security is happening and they are handling customer data and transaction data, they should be at 3.5 plus. Any other questions that we have? Thank you, Vivek, for your comments. Your comments are what has help us continue to do this. We hope we are thankful that you found this useful and informative. Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thank you.
How does CyRAACS support its clients for Metricized security? It's a specific program that we engage for. So we go in, conduct an assessment, which we call the baseline assessment, and we define what the current state is. We have discussions with the senior management and the business teams to understand what their growth strategy is, basis which we define what their target state is. And then we build an opportunity list and then tell them what level of complexity that it is for each of the solutions, so that they can appropriately define the resources that can be allocated to do that. So it's typically a program that is anywhere between 3 months to 6 months on a continuous basis, where clients are engaged and said that you run this program on a continuous basis, on a sustained basis. We provide monthly scorecards to our clients. That helps us. That help them. So we actually give. So it brings a little bit of a competitive advantage to say, so last month I was here, I need to move. So at least some level of this is cosmetic in one way, but that's providing that level of competitiveness to go and get more on how to get to better security. All right. With this, I would like to draw this webinar to close. Thank you very much, team. It has been an excellent to talk to you all, and looking forward to till the next session. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.